Whenever you produce a Kindle ebook, it also needs a special table of contents that Kindle calls a logical table of contents. I'm going to call it an NCX file, but they're the same thing. In this video, I'm going to show you a useful aid to producing the NCX table of contents if your other conversion methods don't produce it for you automatically, or if for whatever reason you decide you want to do it manually. Let's start by reviewing what an NCX table of contents is and how it differs from a regular table of contents. Let's go to the regular table of contents in this book. This is one of mine. Just as expected, the regular table of contents is at the beginning of the book, and I'll underline that point and you'll see why. Once you're there in an ebook, you can jump anywhere, but you have to start from the beginning. Let's suppose I want to go to chapter 5. There we go. Problem is now if I want to go to chapter 15 and I've only got a regular table of content, I'm going to have to scroll painfully down until I get to chapter 15, or I have to scroll all the way back painfully until I get to my regular table of contents, and then I can jump forward again. It's painful. The NCX table of contents, by contrast, is this sidebar. It's always available, and as you advance through the ebook, it tracks your progress, and it also allows you to jump immediately from where you are to any other chapter. So if I want to jump to chapter 15, I don't have to go back to the beginning of the book. I just click on it and hey presto, I'm in chapter 15. So that's the difference. It's a lovely thing, and with many methods of creating a Kindle book, the methods will create this alternative table of contents for you automatically. But it doesn't always work, and sometimes you may choose a more manual method and need to set this up by yourself. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to manually create an NCX table of content using Microsoft Excel as an aid. My assumptions are that you have MS Excel and that you have a draft of your ebook in Microsoft Word, and that your Word draft has a regular table of contents just like the one at the beginning of this book. I'm also assuming that either the automatic creation of the NCX table of contents didn't work for you, or you've chosen deliberately to do it up manually by yourself. Let's see what an NCX file looks like when you open it up, and let's see why it's so complicated that you might need an aid like perhaps Excel to help you set it up and make things faster. Even though it's an NCX type file with an NCX extension, I can open it up with a text app like Note tab. In fact, I'm going to use something slightly different called Notepad++ because it adds some instructive coloring. Here we go. Let's open it up. So immediately you see that it's a very long file. It's got many lines in it, 70 or 80 lines. That's because each chapter in my book has an NCX row, and I have many chapters in my book. That's the first clue why it might be useful to set up an Excel spreadsheet to generate all of this and save you some tedious manual input. In black lettering in the center of the NCX file, you'll see all the chapters of my book by name. So chapter 20 is called Drawn, Hung and Quartered. The reason it's got a 20 next to it is because in my book the chapters are numbered, so this chapter would also have a 20 next to it. So the first order of business, if you were writing this out by hand tediously, would be to write in all these chapters all the way down to acknowledgements and contact the author and blah blah blah. It's a lot of writing, so any shortcut should be welcome. The next thing to notice is that this is a repetitive format, which again is tedious to write out by hand, but if you can use an Excel template to copy out each of the rows for you, so much the better. These things in angle brackets are called tags, and you'll notice that for most left-hand tags like nav point, there's a matching right-hand side tag called /nav point. The left-hand one opens the tag pair, the right-hand one with a slash marks the close. And that is again repeated for every chapter tediously. Open and close nav point and nav label and text tags nested in between all of those. And nested in between all of those, you always have your chapter names. Same structure, doesn't matter which chapter I go to. So a lot of repetition here that the Excel file will help us on. And I'm going to demonstrate how to set one up in a moment, but we're not finished yet. Let's have a look at some of the rest of the structure. After the text tag, we have something called a content tag, which closes itself with its own slash. There's no left and right hand pair here. And what the content tag is referring to is the file, the name of the file containing the text for my book. In my case, I've converted my Word file to an HTML file. And then after that reference, there is something mysterious called _TOC, which stands for Table of Contents, with a strange number. The numbers for now will be a bit of a mystery. I'll explain them in a moment, but what we can see about the numbers is that although they start in a very random looking way, thereafter they increase regularly by 1 each time. We go from 938 to 939 to 940 and so on. Once again, if I put these things in Excel in a column to generate all I would need to tell Excel is the starting number, and Excel for every row thereafter would add 1 and save me a lot of tedious writing. So this still sounds like a great idea to use Excel. As I say, I'm going to demonstrate for you with a simple example rather than having 70 lines and 70 chapters. My example will be short, but of course the time saving comes when you do have many chapters. The other thing to note about this NCX file is that it has 3 mandatory lines at the beginning and 2 at the end. These are not repetitive, so write them into the file by hand using something like the Note tab program or a similar program. So what I'm going to do now is demonstrate how I use Excel, an Excel template as an aid to creating my own NCX table if I need to do that, if the automatic methods either aren't available to me or have failed me. To keep the demo simple, I'm going to start with a very simple book. I have a book which I've called Surprise Demo Book. Let's open it up. I have randomly called it Memoirs of a Bass Guitarist. It has only 3 chapters, blah blah blah. And it has a table of content, and like any well-behaved table of content, if I control click, and I'm going to have to put down the microphone that I'm holding, control click requires 2 hands, sorry about this folks. If I control click on, let's say, chapter 2, of course it's a well-behaved book and it jumps to chapter 2. So I'm assuming you know how to set up this kind of table of content for an ebook. The other thing that I'm assuming is you know that each chapter should have a consistent heading format. In this case, you'll see that my heading style for each chapter, whether it's chapter 1 or chapter 2, is heading 1, whereas the text is merely normal text. This is how Word knows what's to be put in the table of content. So there's the simple book. I'm going to show you how to set up an NCX file using an Excel template. But before I do that, we need to demystify what that strange table of content number was. If you remember, in my more complex example, we had these strange numbers underscore TOC 1940937, which then incremented by 1 for every new chapter. Where does that come from? So let's go back to our simple book. Those numbers are what Microsoft calls bookmarks, and it assigns one bookmark to every chapter heading, and that's how it knows, and that's what it uses to jump from your table of contents to the associated bookmark. It's like a link, like an HTML URL link is what a bookmark is, and it lets you jump to wherever it's pointing you to. Where can we see these URLs? Well, it's a bit funny in Microsoft. I'm using the desktop version of Microsoft. Yours may be a little bit different, but in my version, if I want to see the bookmarks, I go to Insert, I go to Bookmark, and you'll say to me, Peter, those magic numbers aren't there, and this is where Microsoft gets even more weird. I have to uncheck Hidden Bookmark, I have to recheck Hidden Bookmark, and suddenly those magic numbers are there. Well, damn me. So there they are. And to prove it to you, let's take one of them. Let's take the middle one. This should be associated, a bookmark pointing to chapter 2. And if I go to that bookmark, there we go to chapter 2. Now I don't want the bookmark for the second one. I want the first bookmark because every other number, every other chapter is going to increment off that. So let's just copy out the numeric part of that and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. We will in a moment, but where is the Excel spreadsheet? So let me show you what that template looks like. There's a space for the magic TOC number, the magic bookmark, and I can increment it for every chapter. Every row here corresponds to a chapter of my book. I only have to set up a line of text here like this or like this once, and then I can copy it, of course, so that takes away the tedium. You will recall that our structure starts with a nav point, then a nav label text tag, then a text tag, then we put in the chapter name, then we close the text tag, then we close the nav label, then we have a strange contents tag which points to an HTML file. My bad, I shouldn't have the extension here. Let me get rid of that. And of course, no matter how many chapters I have, I just copy it down like that. I copy the HTML down. I have a hash sign, then underscore TOC, and this is where I'll put in the mysterious TOC number. And then I will finish it all with an end slash for the contents tag and an end nav point, but one step at a time. In a moment I'll put in the mysterious TOC number, but first let's put in the chapters. So back to my Word book. Let's ignore this for a moment. Let's go to the chapter names. If I had 70 chapters, I wouldn't want to retype them all, so I'm going to do Control-C, Control-V, cut and paste, or copy and paste. Now you'll notice there's one problem in my copy and paste. These things are still hyperlinked. They're still pointing back at the bookmarks in my Word document. I don't want that. I have to remove the hyperlinks. And somewhere here, there we go. I have an option, right-click, remove hyperlinks. Now I've got straightforward text in there, which is exactly what I want. So I filled this in with one click. If it was 70 chapters, I would have already saved myself a lot of tedium. Here's the name of the file that I will eventually upload to Kindle. In my case, I don't go directly from Word. I like to save the Word file as a filtered web, which gives me an HTML file. Why do I do that? Because in HTML I have much more control over formatting images and lots of other stuff. So if you don't need to do this, good for you. If you need to do it, or I'm doing it, that's why you see HTML. And now let's go to that talk number we keep talking about. Let's go back to the Word document. Cut that out. Go back to the Word document. And let's go back to find where those bookmarks are. Insert, bookmarks. I'm going to take the first one and I'm going to copy and paste just the numeric portion. Control C. Cancel out of here. Go back to my spreadsheet. Control V. There's my numeric part. I wanted to increment by 1 each time I drag down for a chapter, so I'll fill the series. And there we are, 44, 45, 46. No tedium there. The last part is to glue all these columns together into one single output column that I can then put into my NCX file. So gluing together all these opening tags, my chapter name, my closing tags, my demo book, my HTML, blah blah blah, all the way through to closing the nav point. And I do that by what Microsoft and what computer geeks call concatenation. It's just gluing together each of these text bits in each row. And it's done in Microsoft by using the ampersand, which says glue together what's in column A with column B with column C and so on, row by row, and write the results here. And all of this is just now one column. Let's make that clear to everybody. This is one long glued together word. So now if I have my NCX file ready to receive these, I just move these over. Let's have a look at the NCX file. Let's go to the NCX file. I'm going to open it this time just simply with Note tab. Open with Note tab. I've written in the opening 3 lines and the closing 3 lines by hand because they don't repeat. It's not tedious. I'm going to go back to my Excel file. Excuse me. I'm going to copy this with a Control C. I'm going to go back to my NCX file. I'm going to paste all that in with a Control V. And then now if I save my NCX file, it's complete. So let's just recap. All of the repetitive stuff in here comes from the Excel file where it's very easy to repeat. The chapter names don't repeat, but I used cut and paste to take them out of my Word chapter, Word table of contents, put them into the Excel. All of this stuff here, up until the table of contents, comes from the Excel file. It's all repeated, so Excel does a great job of repeating it row for row. I don't have to rewrite it. The first number came from my bookmarks in Excel, and then I incremented them by 1 each time, and the closing /nav point I write once into Excel and I let Excel copy it for me row by row. So if this was 70 chapters long, it would take the tedium out of this for me. So I save this and I'm done. So what's next? Having done all the hard work, there's a little bit of cleanup left. For instance, my notes from about 2017 say I should clean up special characters in the NCX file. So what kind of special characters are we talking about? If we have a look at the NCX file from my book with 70 chapters, you'll see that I have quotes and sometimes even apostrophes within the title names. Now, I haven't tried it out recently to the contrary, but my notes from a few years ago say I have to clean up those and make sure that they're simple quotes and simple apostrophes. What do I mean by simple quotes and simple apostrophes? Well, here's an example. This phrase, "this isn't good," has two curly apostrophes, one on either side in red, and it has a curly quote in the middle, and according to my early notes, NCX does not like those, and I should replace them manually with straight quotes. You'll see in green I have straight apostrophes on either side of this phrase and a straight quote in the middle. Having done your cleanup, what do you do next with an NCX file, and how do you package it? Well, how you package it is like this. You gather together the NCX file, there it is. You gather together any images that are referred to by the NCX file. There's one. And you gather together the main text file that contains the text for your book. Now, as I may have mentioned earlier in this video, I've chosen to use text in an HTML format. How did I get there? Well, I took my Word file, and when I'd done all my work in Word, I saved the Word file. Saved the world, I would like that. I have saved the Word file as a filtered web file, which has a .html extension. Why did I do that? Because once I have the file as an HTML file, I can use some bare bones HTML skills and some bare bones CSS skills to better format images and a few other things. I know there are different ways of preparing text files. I don't claim to understand many of the others. Some of them are extremely complex, and I'm not even going to go there because I have no knowledge of the more complex cases. I'm telling you what I know, and I hope in the process you'll get some insights into NCX, and if this mode isn't exactly what you're doing, I'm hoping the insights are still useful for you. Anyway, I need to package together my NCX files, my images, and the main text file for my book. I need to make sure that, make sure that the name, except for the extension, in the text file for your book and the name for your NCX file are identical, excluding, of course, the extension. And within the NCX file, as you've seen, of course, the reference to the file should be the same. So we've got three file names that, except for the extension, should be exactly the same. Let's go back to that file folder. I then take those three files, NCX, images, of course you might have many images rather than just one, and your text file, and you put them into a zip file. There they are in the zip file, and that is what I upload to Kindle, and then Kindle converts that for me into a Kindle ebook, and it uses my NCX file to generate the alternative table of contents, or as Kindle calls it, the logical table of contents. And if I've done everything right and the stars align, then hey presto, everything works wonderfully. So that's coming to the end of a much longer video than I had anticipated. It doesn't cover every technical case. NCX files can be very complex. And of course the technology changes over time, so right now this works. No guarantees for what will work in 10 years' time. Maybe Kindle will simplify the process further, we can hope. In the meantime, I hope this gives you some insight into the structure of NCX files, and how you might create one manually, and if it's a sufficiently long file, or if you're doing it for many books, how you might simplify the process with the aid of something like an Excel template. Again, I hope that's been useful to you. So long and farewell.